Thank you so much, David. I want to apologize in advance that I did not learn Spanish in school. So I'm going to be presenting today in English, hopefully slowly so much of it will sink in. But like one of the earlier speakers offered, I would be happy to send a PDF of the presentation to you if you want to reach out to me. I have my contact information that will be showing up here shortly. And I will be staying afterwards in the back in the open area with it. There we go, in the back with all the booths, all the vendors and providers. Anyway, thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. As David mentioned, I live in the Seattle area in the United States, and I really love coming down to Mexico City. It's only my 4th visit to Mexico City, but I really like it down here. And I hope to share some ideas with you that you can take away. But I want to start by reflecting on what we've learned already today. I always get a lot out of going to conferences, talking to individuals, managers, executives, vendors, technicians, and just to take you through a few of them. From Plug Them, we learned about measuring, understanding, and acting, but that only 5% of companies actually change their processes, and that's really a tall order to try to fix. From their partner BMW, we learned about going from 15 days to real time. A huge change and a huge improvement in customer experience and learning how to improve the dealer relationships too. Ipsos told us that 80% of Mexican surveyed customers feel like they have a good comprehension of AI, so this group must be even higher than that. So that provides a tall order for all of us speaking that we can share something with you that you can take away that might be new or maybe a different slant than what you've learned before. We also learned from Ipsos that not everything is AI, and I'm actually going to have a few slides talking about customer experience and improving customer relationships before we got all wrapped up in AI, because some of the basics are still equally important to think about as we improve customer and employee experience. From Pentafon, we learned about 4 customer journey levels that were very useful to take away. Genesis had 5 levels, just to get one more than Pentafon did. And so leading to going from no automation to the empathy on the last level. Medallia talked about design thinking, a subject near and dear to our hearts as consultants as well. And also he mentioned frictionless twice, which I really noted because that's the title of my new book. So I like hearing that as well. And then from Avaya, we learned about agent wellness and how to improve that as well. But I want to finish with what we learned from David. First of all, David challenged us to think about HX, human experience, and he also made me fear the chicken. So I want to make sure that I work within the time limit here, still providing you the value and some ideas and some takeaways that you have. So let me just start off then and go through the art and the promise of CX AI. And I'll be talking about CX, Gen AI, as well as basic AI too. And I'm calling it the art and the promise rather than the science and the promise, because a lot of it has to be done through testing and learning and understanding what works and what really is going to be ahead of the curve as your customer demands continue to grow. So it is an art, as we'll discuss here. I'll talk a little bit about my company and my books, a little bit about the art of customer experience, the promise, again, as I mentioned, outside of AI to start, just to get ourselves warmed up. And then I'll talk about the promise and the art of CX AI, and I'll talk about 6 emerging solutions. You've heard about several of them here today already, including Copilot from Genesis, and I'll be talking about other technologies-based, but also process-based improvements using AI. And then one slide at the end about CI risks and challenges. So first of all, I have to start with some cartoons. Those of you that have read my books know that my co-authors and I love putting cartoons in our books that poke fun at what happens in business. The one on the left says, "I will be unable to answer most of your questions." And the tagline is, "The chatbot was useless, but refreshingly honest." The one on the right is, "To unsubscribe, press the orange button." And you see the finger hesitating there. And making the button blue had cut unsubscriptions by 50%. I would invite you to look at my co-author's website, which is called LimeBridge Australia, and limebridge.com, Australia, and he has a whole slew of the cartoons going back more than 10 years. So, talking about Driva Solutions, it's a consulting firm that I formed about 20 years ago up in Seattle, and we do strategic consulting and transformation consulting for generally large companies or companies that want to become large. That's how I kind of look at it. So they might be small today, but they have the ambitions to become large, and they want to survive. And we do consulting from Canada down through Latin America. I have two of my team members here joining me today. And some of the client logos you'll recognize on the right there. Many of them operate here in Mexico and other Latin American countries as well. Along the way, I co-founded something called the LimeBridge Global Alliance, where we operate in 9 or 10 countries around the world, sharing practices and sharing project work where need be. And as David mentioned, I was Amazon's first worldwide VP of customer service in Seattle, working directly for Jeff Bezos for 3 years, which was a heck of an experience. So we can talk about that later on if we want to go into some Amazon stories. So along the way, David Jaffe from Australia and I have written 3 books together, including the first one, The Best Service is No Service. The second one came out 7 years later, called Your Customer Rules. And in that one, you might see there in the red, we coined this new expression called me to be. What we found when we interviewed 15 global customer experience leaders, that they said to us every time, the customer comes first, the customer is in the center of what we do. And it dawned on me that they're really not in the B2B business or the B2C business, or in the case of BMW, the B2B2C, when you sell through dealers. They're in the me-to-be business. They embrace the idea that customer is central to what they do. And we introduced some ideas of AI back in the 2015 book. The latest book came out in 2022, The Frictionless Organization. I have 11 copies left that I don't want to take back to Seattle. And I'll be around the corner in the back if anybody would like to get a copy. It'll be first come, first serve. But it is available on places like Amazon and other places too. But I hope you would enjoy it as a book. My new one is coming out sometime next spring, and I'm doing it with 2 different co-authors, one from India and one from Tel Aviv, Israel. A big challenge writing and editing, but we have more richer, I'd say, global stories because of their experiences, and it's called Zero Complaints. So from these 4 books and some of the consulting that we've done over the years, I have 5 takeaways that I want to start off with. I'm not going to repeat them very much in the discussion, but you'll think about them perhaps as we go through some examples. The first one is you need to make it easy for your customers and for your staff. And that means simplify, simplify, simplify. We have a client today that we're working with, and she's saying, I want to reduce 50% of our processes, 50% of the steps in the processes, and 50% of the words in our knowledge articles. So that's just the start, because she's already told us that when that happens, she wants to go 50% more. But the idea is to make it really, really simple, and you take that from the customer's perspective, and design thinking is an excellent way to start thinking about that. The second one is listening and act. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Third one is one that is a little controversial, but I'm very passionate about this, which is digitize second, not first. The first thing to do is to eliminate stuff that's broken or confusing. And my books talk about that quite a bit. So fix stuff that's broken first, and then figure out what needs to be digitized in the appropriate form factor and make that work really well so it doesn't break for your customers along the way. The fourth one is a little controversial with several of the sponsors here, but I think many of you might resonate with it. Don't bother your customers with surveys. You know a lot already. You know a lot about their transaction history, their interaction history. And that did come up in a couple of the discussions that the previous speakers had, and that's something I'll talk about with one of the AI examples that I'll give you this evening. And the last one is that customer experience is a whole of business challenge. It's not the role of the head of customer service, and most of you probably feel that, or else you wouldn't be in this room. It was good that I reported to Jeff Bezos. We had meetings every Friday where we dwelled on every single reason why customers contacted us. And my team in customer service presented the report, but it was the other executives, like the head of logistics, the website designer, the marketing VP. They had to explain why customers were contacting us for anything at all. The best service should be no service. And so the whole idea was it was a whole of business challenge and opportunity, and that's what really has made Amazon quite successful over the years. Okay, so I'm going to take you through just 2 of those 5 because I really want to get to the point of some of the new solutions that are out there. Making it easy for your customers, simplify, simplify, simplify. Some of you may have read and heard that Starbucks has a new CEO. He comes in from Chipotle, and he has already done a big sweep around the world, talked to their employees. They call them partners, the baristas in the restaurants. He's talked to customers. He's talked to vendors and suppliers. And he says, we have to cut our confusing promotions. We're getting unnecessary contacts because customers don't know what the STARS program is doing. But he also calculated they have more than 1 million possible drink combinations if you go to a Starbucks. And if you've been there waiting behind somebody who is asking for a something with something with something with something, you know that takes a lot of time and it's hard for the baristas. It might even create a mistake because maybe you didn't put in that double shot of something or other. I don't drink coffee, but that's what happens in Starbucks. And that will reduce the steps that baristas need to take. And he wants to cut time to under 4 minutes when you walk into a Starbucks store until you walk out with your product or you stay there with your product. Right now, the average is 8 to 15 minutes. And fast food is usually 4.5 minutes. So he's setting a really aggressive target. Simplify, simplify, simplify. There's a new U.S. law that you may have read about called Click to Cancel. It went into effect recently. It's going to make it just as easy to cancel a subscription model as it is to sign up for it. No multiple contacts. You don't need to call anybody and try to explain your way out of the subscription. You click once and you can cancel. The picture on the low right, hard to see, is EVs, electric vehicles, have fewer moving parts, and that leads to less service and lower costs. An internal combustion engine, ICE, has 2,000 moving parts, and an EV has 20. It makes it hugely cost-effective, means you don't need to bring it in for service because fewer things are going to break as well. And lastly, on the bottom is one of my favorites. One of my friends is a world expert on designing and redesigning flags, national flags, state flags, and so forth. And he helped in the redesign of the Minnesota state flag that went from that rather complicated picture on the left to the one on the right. And some of you who may know the United States might recognize that the dark blue is actually symbolic of the shape of Minnesota. It has that shape when you look at the map. Inside of it is the North Star, which is barely visible on the left, but is a very important part of their culture. The North Star, the Northern Lights, were the northern state in the United States. The one on the right I love, it's the light blue for all the waters. The 1,000 lakes and all the waters are in Minnesota. It's talking to the citizens. So here's a government to citizen, a G to C, thinking in that same way so they can feel closer to their own state. Another example I'll give you as a transition from making simple to some of the other examples is this sign that was plastered on all the Amazon customer service center walls when I arrived there in 1999. And that was, have you educated a customer today? The vision was, and the plan was, and the action was to spend 15 to 30 seconds at the end of every call to kind of brief the customer of what happened, maybe let them know they could do self-service the next time, or how they could understand a promotion, or how they could read the delivery data that was on the website. Take that time to educate the customer so they understood what it was going to be like to become a customer for Amazon. During my first holiday there in 1999, we fell behind in our service levels. And we started brainstorming as an executive team what to do about that. And one of my colleagues said, well, Bill, if you just eliminated that education at the end of the calls and the email sessions, you would save this much time. First of all, he knew that. Every director above in the company knew that that was our practice. But number two, before I said anything, our VP of marketing said, no. We get more customers than ever during the holiday season, during Christmas and the holiday season. This is when we need to double down and educate them so that they are ready to keep working with us after the holiday season. So, important takeaway to really worry about customer experience, in this case, agent experience or employee experience too. And just briefly here, I'll talk about the second of these non-AI examples. And this is to listen and learn and act and to anticipate what your customers need, to join up the dots, as I mentioned earlier. Nike, one of my clients and favorite companies, figured out they needed to actually route their active runners, marathoners and very active runners, to their shoe engineers in their headquarters in Oregon, not send them through the queues to a customer service center. Because they had a marathoner speaking to someone who did not run very much, certainly was not an active marathoner, and the conversations didn't work well. That led to, among other things, the invention of a brand new shoe by the shoe engineers called the Nike Flyknit shoe. It also led to the creation of a new program that's been around for a few years called the Nike Member Program. And maybe some of you are Nike members. I became one after I learned about it. Any Nike member can send an inline chat or a WhatsApp to any person within Nike to find out an answer to their question. It could be about clothing, could be about shoes, it could be about anything. And it's become a really good bonding program for the company, just from that earlier listening and acting of getting the active runners over to the shoe engineers. T-Mobile has a requirement that all of their directors and above have to spend a week a year in a retail store working. Now, they're observing, but they have to work behind the counter, come out to greet customers, and they have to do it outside of their hometown. So they have to jump on a plane and live someplace else for a week. And they all come back, they tell me, with a long list of things to fix, to improve, to simplify, and things that they learn from customers, not by listening to recorded calls or looking at reports, but by actually talking to them in the retail stores. And lastly, a shout out for one of the best restaurants in the Seattle area called Canlis. If you come up there, we'll go there. It's a fantastic restaurant. And I was there with my wife celebrating one of my daughter's special birthdays. Both of my daughters were with us, so there are 4 of us there. And the bread service was very quietly sent around to the 4 of us, but I got olive oil instead of butter. And the meal went on, and the server came back, and I asked her, why did I get olive oil instead of butter? And here's what she said. She said, well, Mr. Price, when you came here with your wife 3 years ago for your anniversary, you requested olive oil instead of butter, and we kept that in our records. The records were on file cards for their customers, but they consulted that before I arrived and gave me olive oil instead. So the idea of listening and acting, all these being simple, we know how to do this in many organizations, and we need to keep this in mind as we embark on the AI and the Gen AI journey. So I'm now going to just quote a report recently that was in the Harvard Business Review, and this is: what outcomes in your organization are you most hoping to achieve from adopting AI-powered customer service or customer experience tools? And the attendees or the respondents could pick up to 3. The biggest one was improving customer customer loyalty, for example. Then greater data-driven customer insights, which we've heard from the previous presenters as well. Reducing an operating cost, but as number 3. I like seeing that down there as number 3. Improving agent efficiency coupled with improving agent satisfaction over there, and then increasing sales and revenue. And so I'm going to come back to this towards the end when I match up these 6 new ideas against this as a list of the promise of using CX and AI. This is a segment from a report, and I've got more details in the appendix if you want to get a copy of it, from a group in the US called the Everest Group. And they're a BPO and ITO, IT outsourcing research firm that's done a tremendous job understanding how the third-party markets work. Pentaphon probably knows who Everest is. These are 8 different use cases that they proposed about a year ago for Gen AI and customer experience management. And I extracted a few of these when I go through the upcoming slides and show you what are some ideas that are going out there that you might want to try within your organizations. So these are the 6. First one is an intelligent IVR or chatbot. It goes by different names, IVA and so forth. I'll go through that in a little bit of detail. The second one is Agent Assist. Third one is Auto Translate. I'll talk about Smart NBA, Next Best Action, Automated Intent Generating, and Continuous Insights. And I decided to build this as an example of what a customer's doing. So you see it as kind of a mini case. I won't talk about a named company. I'll talk about, from the consumer point of view, from the customer point of view, what really prompted the availability and the use of these different tools. So the first one is the IVR, intelligent IVR chatbot. And we heard earlier complaints from the other speakers. IVRs and chatbots often open up with something really bland and non-helpful. How can I help you? And then there's previous history is often not included. There are endless loops that you have to go through, especially IVR jail, as it's nicknamed. and oftentimes the data is not passed to the agent. So if the customer has to go through that upfront tool and speak to an agent, they often have to repeat themselves, which is very frustrating for everybody. Instead, you have something now where, and I'll give you this example, the customer's anxious waiting for a delivery of a product, and the product is supposed to come gift wrapped. She paid extra for gift wrapping, and she wants it by a certain day. And she's a little bit anxious because she hasn't gotten the product yet. So she calls the support number. The IVR or the chatbot recognizes who she is by her ANI, her ANI, her phone number, or perhaps by an account number or an order number, and maybe at some point in the future by voice biometrics. But in this case, let's just say it recognizes her and apologizes immediately for the delays in getting the gift wrap product to her. Rather than saying, how can I help you? It recognized the recent order, presumed in this case successfully, that's why she was calling. And so it offers to her something like, would you like us to send it to you without the gift wrapping? And she says no. Okay, at that point, the IVR says it will then route her to an escalation team. It then goes to, in this case, a tier 2 team, not a tier 1 who would have to kind of learn on the job necessarily, but a more experienced agent who then immediately also apologizes and offers to send it overnight with separate gift wrap paper. And she accepts that. In other words, she wanted the gift wrap paper, she liked the color, she liked whatever it was, but she wasn't going to get it ungift wrapped. She wanted it, and she accepted this as an offer. So as a result of this, a much, much shorter time in that upfront engine, also a much shorter handle time between the agent, the tier 2 agent, and the customer, and you have to guess a much higher first contact resolution and CSAT as a result of this as well. The second one is Agent Assist, which is also called Copilot, and we heard about Copilot a couple of times earlier today. And this is one that particularly excites me, and we're seeing a lot of testing and learning about this around the world. So instead of the agent searching for articles that might be outdated or very hard for them to understand if they apply, while the customer continues to bombard the agent with more detail, more data, more questions. So the agent is getting a bit flustered, also trying to scan through maybe multiple screens of databases. And you really can't measure FCR very well by this process. Instead, in this case, the customer home service internet is not working again. It's down again. And that was what they said at the beginning of their conversation. And the IVR bot can't solve that problem. Multiple problems with the internet aren't really a good thing for a bot to try to answer. So instead, it sends it straight to a tech support queue. The agent on the right side begins to troubleshoot, but at the same time, the AI bot is listening to the conversation real time and offers up particular knowledge articles or suggestions, including slow down, or maybe think about this a little bit more, or offer an apology, or offer some sort of a discount or refund, whatever the appropriate opportunity might be. And it does that by having a huge LLM behind it that goes through all the previous contact histories and begins to come up with these recommendations, or sometimes they're called interventions. At that point, if the recommendation is accepted by the agent, then the machine learns and it moves on to figure out whether that customer has to contact the company again about that issue. If the customer does not call again about that issue or contact about that issue, it's a good presumption of FCR. If the agent does not accept that solution, then the bot might try one more time, but also registers that that previous offer, that first offer didn't work. Let's not try that one again, at least with this particular circumstance. And these systems are in place and are doing tremendously well. We're seeing 30 to 45% less handle time at the agent level, and they love it because they get this agent assist, this assistance to provide the appropriate answer. Faster time to resolution, FTR, sometimes abbreviated, more accurate FCR scores, I mentioned, to see whether that customer contacted you again, the machine learning, and also moving back upstream, if necessary, improving chatbot responses or intelligent IVR responses based on what was successful downstream talking to an agent. So it has all sorts of things that are working for it. Let me just go through the third one. Customers often have trouble understanding live agents, especially when they're speaking two different native languages. And here, and you see this and hear this painfully with frequent requests by the customer to repeat a response or an answer. And there's often a second or third contact needed, so these are clearly not first contact resolution situations. So here I'll give the example of a customer needing help to update her personal data. She calls the 800 number. The IVR bot can't solve it. For this example, the IVR bot can't solve it. The IVR bot sends it to, and that should read the customer care queue. So it goes to the customer care queue. And the interaction with a live agent is the agent speaks in his or her native language. Let's say it's Spanish or Hindi or any other language that is now being programmed. But the customer hears it in her native language, in English, real time. So it's an immediate auto-translate. There are several vendors. There we go. There are several vendors, several companies experimenting with this today. BPOs are particularly interested in this when they have agents who are working in different countries who are supporting an English-speaking audience or an audience in a different language. And the advantages here, as you could see, are much higher CSAT back and forth, CSAT from in ASAT too, agent satisfaction, shorter talk time, and a higher FCR. Fourth one is Smart NBA, next best action. Unfortunately, NBA was touted about 10 or 12 years ago as a really great way to generate more revenue, cross-sell, upsell to your customers when they're contacting you. But unfortunately, in many cases still, the same offer is presented by the agent to different customers, as opposed to being personalized, which we heard about earlier is really a much more important topic. High levels of frustration, and the revenue is just not coming in. Very low connection or success rate or attachment rate. So the example here is the customer wants to cancel part of his service plan. That's a pretty serious opening line by the customer, and one that the company has to take seriously, of course. So the IVR bot sends him immediately to a retention queue, not even trying to deal with it through the automated answer. So that's a very, very short upfront automation time. And now the agent tries to resolve the root cause. The agent attempts to save the customer using personalized offers, and that might be based on the customer's lifetime value, CLV, behavioral science, and previous complaints, all that being rendered by the AI, by the LLM and the Gen AI. And the customer says he'll think about it, but the agent feels like they're close, so the agent offers something a little bit more, which was also available as kind of a backup plan from the LLM or from the tool. And the customer goes, fine, I'll take that. So what started out as a possible cancellation winds up being a customer retain, and in that case, you'll see some of the benefits are higher conversion rates, shorter calls, lower customer effort, and a much higher revenue, which is really what the goal of NBA was in the first place. Now we can start achieving some of those goals of NBA. The next to the last one is automated intent generation. Agents today, many agents today are still struggling trying to pick the intent or the reason from a drop-down menu, and drop-down menu inside of a drop-down menu. We've seen as many as 10,000 possible combinations for a single agent to pick at the end of the call to figure out what that reason was. The average we see is somewhere in the 500 to 1,000 range. When you add it all up, it's really a difficult challenge for them. And so the agents often pick the first one that's offered, or if something like general or other is mentioned, they'll pick that too. They just want to move on to the next contact. Speech and text analytics are doing a much better job than the agents can do, but you still see, for all the major players that I've noticed, about a 15 to 25% rate of no match. Okay, that's still pretty good. You get maybe a 75 to 85% match, but it's not 100%. You still don't know what's lurking behind that no match category. So in this case, the customer is interested in a new offer, but he's confused about it. So he sends a WhatsApp message to the care team. WhatsApp moves him to the sales team. That was just something that was done very, very quickly here. And then the WhatsApp agent works to answer the questions, but unfortunately adds more confusion and before the customer is satisfied and takes the offer. The agent eventually gets through and the offer is explained. What's good about this tool and tools like it is that the agent does not need to do any note-taking at the end of the contact. The contact is completely automated in a very simple form, let's say 2 to 3, maybe 5 sentences, so that future agents about dealing with that customer or that issue with the customer know much more succinctly what's going on. And you have a standard way of approaching it using ChatGPT. Also, the AI tool leverages several LLMs to figure out what the intent was and is able to track some customer sentiment. But I'm going to talk about customer sentiment in the last one more specifically. Here you get significant time saving, shorter interactions, 100% summary of what happens during the contacts, And it's done on a consistent basis across multiple groups, whether they're outsourced or captive and so forth, across multiple channels. And then sentiment can also be captured. But the last one I'll go through is continuous insights. And I'm really excited about this one as well. So this one goes back to my comment before about not relying on surveys. Because surveys have a great purpose. Ipsos does fantastic surveys. I'm not talking about that type of survey as much as I am post-interaction surveys where the response rate is low and might be biased or skewed, and yet we pore over those reports in terms of looking at minor improvements in NPS or some other metric, when in fact the response rate might be only 5, 10, 15, 20%, meaning 80% or more of your customers may not even bother to contact you with a response. And so here, let's say the customer's having a problem with a self-service feature in the app. Also, we're talking about using WhatsApp here, goes to the care team. The WhatsApp agent resolves their problem, but she adds that she's thinking about changing providers. All of a sudden, additional antenna have to go up. And that agent shifts in an omni-channel, but also a multi-skilled type of fashion to go into a retention mode, not sending that customer to retention, but keeps it where that first resolution was occurring, and then saves the customer. But during this, the AI tool listens carefully for, in one case, we've seen 72 different emotions that can be captured based on what the customer is saying and how he or she is saying it. They do it by keeping it in speech, but also can be detected by translating it down into text form. These 72 emotions translate into whatever score you might want to have. A Net Promoter Score, a CSAT score with 5 boxes, 7 boxes, a customer effort score, or your own score. And it does that automatically by listening to every single conversation and all the parts of the conversation. So the customer may start confused, then they get angry about what they're hearing, then it comes up a bit. You saw also the circles on the pictures there earlier, but it's done here automatically with these tools. And the advantages here are much more comprehensive insights, the opportunity to intervene, which we mentioned before, if the scores go down or the customer says something like, hey, I really think I want to cancel now. I thank you for fixing that, but I really want to cancel. And so it has a lot of benefits and can be then supplemented with surveys that you might be doing to really give a much richer insight or idea about what customers are up to. So this is I do this a lot. My team finds it a little bit confusing, but I've done this. We first did this with Dell many years ago when we did some interesting tech support consulting for Dell. But here I have the 6 solutions matched up against those 7 outcomes that were from that earlier HBR, Harvard Business Review report. And we have solid lines in blue that show that we believe it's an excellent fit between those 2 items. And then the green line, a little bit lighter, is maybe a good fit. So there's really a good connection among these 7 on the right side and the 6 emerging CX AI solutions, whether they're Gen AI or what I would call basic AI as well. So just finishing with one slide here on some of the risks and challenges. Some of these came up already with the other speakers, but I'll just touch on a few that might be new. How to justify the expenses. Testing and learning is really the best way we've seen to work this out. And then creating ROI based on the classic trio of revenues, cost, and the value of customer experience. So you need to unlock that value of customer experience, whether it's customer lifetime value, word of mouth, and so forth. Preventing hallucinations. You can use RAG, retrieval automated generation, fine-tuning, guardrails. There's some really good ways. That's become less of an issue because it was so badly popularized when Google and others released some of their first Gen AI solutions. And just the last one, I'll skip to the last one as kind of some food for thought as you finish up this conference and then go home and start thinking about AI and other predictive analytics, which is the following. How do you include customers who never complain? And in our new book, Frictionless Organization, we talk about that in the next to the last chapter, which is called Learn. And the truth is that many of your customers don't bother to contact you. And the presumption often is, well, they must be happy. They must be happy campers. Things are going fine. They just don't want to contact. They don't need to contact us. Everything's going well. The opposite side of that is, no. They're silent sufferers, and sooner or later we're going to lose them. The truth is somewhere in the middle, but probably skewed towards the silent sufferers, and you don't know that. Companies don't know that. Organizations make the wrong presumptions about that. And so the idea of using AI and predictive analytics and specific outbound contacting can begin to unlock that puzzle. as agents wind up being supplemented and in a small case replaced by AI, as AI assist and other tools free up time, so instead of having 6 minutes for a call, it might be 4 or 5, that gives you an opportunity to redeploy some of your staff to call up, literally call up or send messages out. Could be a text message to customers that have not contacted you in a while, but have transacted with you, have been active customers. And you'll find some amazing results when we've seen this in place. And the silent sufferers are really what comes out of this, and including insights, which is, the reason I don't contact you is I don't think you're really easy to deal with. Last time I tried your bot, it didn't work. Your agent was unresponsive, and all these things come out of it. So think about that one as a takeaway in terms of how to use Gen AI and the art and the promise of AI in general. With that, I want to thank you for your time today, and look forward to meeting a lot of you today.